When I met my son's fiancée for the first time, she looked me up and down and said, "Well, at least Caleb won't have to worry about you stealing the spotlight at the wedding. You look like you've been through a war." She laughed at her own joke, and my son laughed with her. But 3 weeks later, when her father walked into my living room, he dropped his car keys on the floor, started shaking, and asked, "My God, is that really you? After all these years?" Before I tell you the rest, do me a favor and drop a comment, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I read every single one. I'd spent the better part of that Saturday morning getting the house ready. Not because I'm fussy, but because my late wife Barbara always said you can tell everything about a person by how they treat a guest at the front door. She passed 11 years ago this October, and I still talk to her sometimes when I'm setting the table. I think she'd have liked the pot roast I made that day. Carrots, parsnips, the small red potatoes she used to roast in duck fat. I even pulled out the good plates, the ones with the blue rim that came from her grandmother in Pittsburgh. My name is Bertram Hollis Caldwell. Most people just call me Bert. I'm 67 years old, retired now, and I live alone in the same 3-bedroom Craftsman on Linden Street that Barbara and I bought in 1989 with money I'd saved from 12 years of overtime. The house isn't fancy. The kitchen tile is original. The wood floors creak in 3 specific spots. But it's mine. Paid off in 2014. Every nail, every shingle, every wire in the walls was paid for with my own 2 hands. My son Caleb is 34. He's my only child. Barbara and I tried for years before we had him. And when he came, late, after we'd given up hoping, he was the answer to every prayer I never said out loud. He's a good kid. Always has been. Maybe a little too eager to please, maybe a little soft in places where I should have made him stronger. But he's got Barbara's heart, and that's worth more than anything I could have taught him. He'd been seeing this woman, Sloan in Pemberton, for about 5 months when he called me up and said he wanted to bring her over for dinner. He sounded nervous. Excited and nervous, the way he used to sound when he had to give an oral report in 5th grade. I told him to bring her by on Saturday at 6. I had everything ready by 1:45. The roast was resting under foil. The wine, a decent bottle of red I'd picked up at the grocery store, was open and breathing. I'd showered, put on a clean button-down, even ran a comb through what's left of my hair. I caught myself in the hallway mirror and thought, "Bert, you look like a man who's about to meet his future daughter-in-law for the first time." And I felt a little nervous, too. The doorbell rang at 6:04. I opened the door, and there she was. Sloan Pemberton stood on my porch in a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security. Her hair was pulled back tight. She was holding a small bouquet of flowers, the kind they sell at the gas station, and she handed them to me before I could say hello. "You must be Caleb's father," she said. Then her eyes did this thing. They moved from my face down to my shoes and back up again. Slow, like she was pricing me. Wow. "Caleb, you really weren't kidding when you said your dad was a regular guy." She laughed. Caleb stood behind her, and instead of saying anything, instead of stepping in, he laughed too. A small laugh. Embarrassed. Like he was apologizing for me being me. I stepped back and let them inside. "Come on in," I said. "Dinner's almost on the table." She walked past me without taking her shoes off, and I watched her eyes do that scanning thing again. Only now, it was the inside of my house. The coat rack. The framed photo of Barbara and Caleb on the entryway wall. The runner rug that had been there since 1996. She was tallying it up. I'd seen that look before, decades ago, when I worked nights and we'd respond to break-ins. The way a thief looks at a room. "This is so charming," she said in the voice people use when they mean the opposite. "It's like stepping into a time capsule." "It's home," I said. We sat down. I served the roast. Caleb complimented it twice. Sloan pushed hers around her plate and asked me what I did before I retired. "I was with the city," I said. 28 years. "Doing what?" she asked. "Permits? Records? Something like that," I said. I don't know why I didn't tell her. Maybe because the way she'd said permits made me realize she was already deciding what kind of man I was. Maybe because Barbara always told me my work was something I carried with me, not something I needed to hand to strangers. Maybe because I'd already started watching her. The way you watch a stray dog you're not sure is friendly. She set down her fork. Caleb told me you live here all by yourself. I do. In all 4 bedrooms? She gave a little laugh. That seems like an awful lot of house for one person, doesn't it? My mother always says, you don't own a house. The house owns you. My mortgage is paid off, I said. Even so, she said, the taxes alone on a place like this, the roof, the plumbing. Caleb says it's a craftsman. Those are notorious for galvanized pipes. I looked at Caleb. He was very interested in his potatoes. And the neighborhood, she went on. I drove through here on the way over and, well, it's changed, hasn't it? Caleb said when you moved in. This was a really desirable area, now. She made a small face like she'd smelled something bad. I'm sure you've thought about downsizing. I set down my own fork. I made my voice as even as I could. Sloane, I said. We just met. I know, she said brightly. But Caleb and I have been talking, and we just want what's best for everyone, including you. A condo somewhere with an elevator, no yard work, no stairs. It would be such a load off. I like stairs, I said. I like yards. She looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the wall. Dad, he said. We were just thinking, long term. There it was, the we. The little word that told me everything. They hadn't come to dinner to meet me. They'd come to assess me. I stood up. I cleared the plates. I told them I was tired, that the cleanup could wait, that maybe we should call it a night. Sloane gathered her purse and her coat with the kind of speed that told me she was relieved. At the door, she squeezed my arm. Her hand was cold. It was so nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell, she said. I'm sure we'll have lots more dinners. Maybe next time at our place. We'll cook for you. Sure, I said. I shut the door. I locked it. I stood in the front hall and listened to her heels go down my porch steps, and I felt my hands start shaking. Not with hurt, not exactly. With something colder, something more useful. I cleaned up. I scraped her plate into the trash and I scrubbed every dish by hand. Then I sat in my recliner in the dark living room and thought about what I'd just seen. Caleb called me at 7 the next morning. Dad, you embarrassed Sloane. Did I? She felt like you weren't open to her. She tried to connect with you, and you just shut her down. She told me my house was too big for me, and my neighborhood had gone downhill. We hadn't been at the table 20 minutes. She was trying to help. She was trying to figure out what I'm worth, Caleb. There was a long silence on the line. You owe her an apology, he said finally. I don't think I do. Fine, he said. Then maybe we just need some space. He hung up. I sat there at the kitchen table with my coffee getting cold, and I thought about Barbara. I thought about what she'd say. And I thought about who taught me how to walk into a burning building, which is what my career had actually been. The thing I told Sloane was permits. I'd been a firefighter for the city of Concord, New Hampshire, for 28 years. I'd been a captain for the last 9. I retired at 58 after a roof collapse put a piece of rebar through my left shoulder. I pulled people out of cars folded like paper. I'd carried children down ladders. I'd watched men I trained with die because the floor gave out underneath them. You don't survive a career like that without learning how to read a room. You learn how to spot the thing that's about to fail, the beam that's going to give, the smoke pattern that means the fire is in the walls, not just the kitchen. Sloane Pemberton had walked into my house and showed me exactly where the fire was. A week passed. Then another. Caleb didn't call. I didn't either. I went about my days. Coffee at 6, a walk around the block, the hardware store on Tuesdays. I didn't sleep well, but I made myself eat. I made myself shave. Barbara would have wanted that. On the 18th day, Caleb showed up at my door alone. He looked thinner. He stood on the porch with his hands in his coat pockets, and he wouldn't quite meet my eye. "Can I come in, Dad?" I let him in. We sat in the living room. He didn't take his coat off. "Sloan and I are getting married," he said. "We picked a date, June 19th. "That's quick," I said. "It feels right." "All right." He looked down at his hands. "I came to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer." "Go on." "We need help with the wedding. And well, after. Sloane's parents have offered to put up some of the venue costs, but it's a lot. And we've been thinking, with the housing market the way it is, and you in this big house alone." "Stop," I said. He stopped. "You want money." "Just a loan, Dad. 20,000, we'd pay you back. And the house thing, we pay you back. And the house thing, I'm not saying right away, but eventually. After the wedding, we help with the upkeep. We'd be company." I looked at my son, my only son, the boy I'd watched come into the world in a hospital room in February of 1991, the boy who'd ridden his first bike down this same Linden Street, the boy who'd sat next to his mother's hospital bed for 9 months and held her hand when she stopped breathing. "No," I said. He blinked. "What? No to the money? No to the house? No to all of it? Dad, you have it, you don't even—" "I have it because I worked for it. I have it because your mother and I went without things for years so we could have it. I have it because you crawled across burning floors for 30 years to earn it. It's not about whether I can. It's about whether I should." His face went red. "Sloan said you'd say that." "Did she?" "She said you'd never accept her. That you'd find ways to punish us." "Caleb," I said, "listen to yourself." He stood up. "Forget it," he said. "Listen to yourself." He stood up. "Forget it," he said. "Forget I asked." He walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. "You're going to die alone in this house, Dad. I hope you know that." He left. I sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I'd done my crying back when Barbara was sick. There wasn't much left in me for that, but I did pick up the phone. I called a lawyer the next morning. A woman named Patricia Whitfield, who'd handled Barbara's estate when she passed. She remembered me. She fit me in on Thursday. I drove down to her office in the rain. I sat across from her and I told her everything. The dinner, the questions about the house, the loan request, my son's words at the door. She took notes the whole time, and when I was done, she set down her pen. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, "what would you like to do?" "I want to make sure," I said, "that no matter what happens to me, that woman never sees $1 of what I built." She nodded. We spent the next 2 hours going through it. She explained the difference between a will and a trust. She explained how a transfer on death deed works in New Hampshire. She explained how I could name a beneficiary on every account I had, which would mean those funds wouldn't go through probate at all. "And your son?" she asked. I sat with that one. "Set up a small trust for him," I finally said. "Enough to help. But conditional. He gets it at 50, and only if he's no longer married to her. If he is, it goes to charity." She raised an eyebrow. "That's an unusual provision." "My son's a good man," I said. "He's just lost. If he's still with her at 50, he's gone, and I'd rather the money do some good somewhere else." She wrote it down. "What charity?" I thought about it. "The New Hampshire Firefighter Survivors Fund," I said, "and the Concord Children's Hospital." I left her office 4 hours later with a folder full of paperwork and a feeling in my chest I hadn't had in a while. Not happiness, but clarity. The same feeling I used to get walking out of a building after we'd contained the fire and everybody made it out alive. 2 weeks later, Caleb called. "Dad." His voice was different. Soft. Cautious. "Sloan wants to apologize. We both do. We were under a lot of stress. The wedding planning has been overwhelming, and I think we'd both said things we didn't mean." "All right. Could we come over?" "Just for an hour. Coffee. Nothing big." Saturday at 3, I said. They came at 3 on the dot. Sloane was wearing jeans this time, flat shoes, a simple sweater. Her hair was down. She'd dialed everything back about 2 notches, and I had to give her credit. She was a quick study. She sat on my couch, and she folded her hands in her lap, and she apologized. She said she'd been nervous. She said she'd grown up at a difficult home, and sometimes she came on too strong when she was uncomfortable. She said she admired everything Caleb had told her about me, and she wanted, more than anything, to start over. It was good, genuinely good. If I hadn't been watching for it, I might have believed her. But I'd seen the file. A friend of mine from the department, a guy named Kurt, who'd retired into private investigation work, had run a quiet check on Sloane Pemberton for me. It came back the day before. She'd been engaged once before, to a man 23 years older than her, in Boston. He died of a heart attack at 61. She'd contested his will. She'd lost, but not before tying up the estate for 14 months. I didn't say any of that. I sipped my coffee. I told her I appreciated her coming. I told them both I was glad they'd reached out. When they left, Sloane hugged me. She held on a beat too long. "We should have you over for dinner soon," she said. "Caleb's place. I'll cook." "Sure," I said. After they were gone, I sat in my chair and I waited. The visits started up again. Once a week, sometimes twice. Sloane brought groceries. Sloane brought baked goods from a bakery in town. Sloane asked about my hobbies and listened, really listened, when I talked about my woodworking shop in the garage. Caleb relaxed. He started smiling again. He hugged me when he came in and when he left. I watched her. In the 3rd week, she opened my kitchen cabinets without asking and rearranged my coffee mugs. "This is more efficient," she said. "You'll thank me." In the 5th week, she stood at my back window and looked at the yard. "You know, if you took out that hedge, the property would feel so much bigger. It would really open up the resale value." "I'm not selling." "Of course not. I just mean someday. For Caleb." In the 7th week, she left a magazine on my coffee table when she went to the bathroom. It was a real estate listing for a senior living community in Manchester, 2-bedroom unit, ground floor, $3,200 a month. There was a sticky note on the front with my name written on it in her handwriting. I picked it up. I held it in my hand for a long time. Then I put it back exactly where she left it. I documented every visit. I had a small notebook in my desk drawer. Date, time, what she said, what she did, where her eyes went, what she touched. I'd done incident reports for 30 years. This wasn't any different. In the 9th week, my mailman delivered an envelope from Granite State Realty, addressed to me. Inside was a comparative market analysis of my property, estimated value $612,000. The cover letter thanked me for my inquiry and said they looked forward to discussing listing options. I had not made any inquiry. I called the realtor. A pleasant young woman answered. I explained that I had not requested any market analysis on my property and asked who had. She paused. Then I heard her clicking through her computer. "Sir, our records show the request came from a Sloane Pemberton who indicated she was your son's fiancée and was acting on your behalf in coordinating estate planning. She is not authorized to act on my behalf in any capacity." "I understand, sir. I'm so sorry. I'll flag the file." I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table. I felt that old feeling again, the one I used to get just before we breached a door. The slow, focused calm. The wedding was 4 weeks out. I called Patricia Whitfield. I told her about the realtor. She told me to come in Monday morning. We finalized everything. Every account, every deed, every beneficiary form. Patricia walked me through each signature, each notary stamp. By the time I left her office that afternoon, the house, the savings, the pension, the small portfolio I'd built up, every cent of it was protected 6 ways from Sunday. That night, Caleb called. "Dad, I want you to come to dinner. Sloane's parents are flying in next weekend. They want to meet you before the wedding. Can you come Saturday at our place?" I almost said no. The whole thing felt staged. but something in me wanted to see them. Sloane's parents. I wanted to look in their faces. I wanted to know who'd raised her. "All right," I said. "I'll be there." "Thank you, Dad." "Thank you. It means everything." I drove out to their apartment that Saturday with a bottle of wine and the strange, quiet readiness I used to feel pulling up to a working fire. The kind of stillness where you don't think anymore. You just move. Caleb opened the door. "Dad, you're early. They're not here yet. Come in, come in." The apartment was small. Boxes still half unpacked from when they moved in together. Sloane was in the kitchen, in a green dress, putting the finishing touches on a roast chicken. She kissed my cheek when I came in. Her hand was steady. Her smile was perfect. "Mr. Caldwell, Bert. I'm so glad you came." I gave her the wine. She set it on the counter. We made small talk for about 10 minutes. Caleb was nervous. He kept looking at his phone. Then the buzzer rang. "That's them," he said, and he went to let them up. Sloane looked at me. For 1 second, just one, the smile dropped. Her eyes met mine, cold and clear. "You and I should talk before they get here," she said quietly. "Should we?" "I know what you've been doing, Bert. The trust. The deed. Patricia Whitfield's office. I have my ways of knowing." I didn't say anything. "Caleb's going to be your beneficiary one way or another," she said, "whether it's now or in 15 years. The math doesn't change, so you can fight me on this or you can be reasonable. We could have a nice relationship, you and I. I could be a daughter to you. Or," she shrugged, "you can spend the next decade in court." "Sloane," I said, "you don't know who you're talking to." She tilted her head. "Don't I?" The front door opened. I heard Caleb's voice, and then a man's voice answering, deep and warm, and a woman. Sloane turned. She walked toward the entryway with her arms out. "Mom! Dad! You made it!" I stood up from the couch. The man came in first. Tall, 60-something, gray at the temples, in a navy blazer. He had his arm around his wife, a slim woman with kind eyes and the same blonde hair as her daughter. He looked at me. He stopped. He looked at me again. The car keys he was holding fell out of his hand and hit the floor. "Oh my God," he said. His voice cracked. "Oh my God." His wife looked at him. "Honey, what is it?" He didn't answer her. He took 2 steps toward me. His face had gone completely white. "Is it?" he started. He couldn't finish. He tried again. "Is that really you, after all these years?" I looked at his face. I didn't recognize him. Not at first. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't." "April 14th, 1998, he said. 48, Mountain View Road, Concord. The kitchen fire. The room went silent. I felt the floor shift under me. "Mountain View," I said. "You came in through the back." The whole second floor was gone. "My daughter." He turned and looked at Sloane, who was standing frozen in the kitchen doorway. My daughter was 8 years old. She was in the upstairs bathroom. The smoke. His wife had her hand over her mouth. "You went up the stairs," he said. "Your captain was on the radio screaming at you to come back. We could hear him from the lawn. You came out 3 minutes later with our little girl in your arms. She wasn't breathing. You did CPR right there on the grass. You brought her back." I remembered. I remembered the kitchen, the grease fire that had jumped to the cabinets, the way the smoke had been so thick on the second floor I'd had to crawl. I remembered the bathroom door, locked from the inside. I remembered kicking it. I remembered the small body crumpled on the tile. Blonde hair, no movement. I'd carried her down. I'd done compressions. She coughed up black smoke and started crying, and I'd handed her to the medics and walked away to be sick behind the truck, where the family couldn't see me. I'd never known her name. Just another save. Just another report. "Sloane," I said. I turned to look at her. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, and her face had drained of every drop of color. She had her hand on the doorframe like she might fall. Her mouth was open. She was staring at me. "It can't be," she said. Her father was crying now, openly, not even trying to hide it. He came across the room and grabbed both of my hands in his. "Sir," he said. "Sir, my name is Henrik Pemberton. This is my wife, Linnea. That little girl you saved is our daughter, Sloane. She's standing right there. She's getting married next month. Because of you." My son was looking back and forth between us, and I could see him trying to put it together, trying to make sense of why his father, the one who told Sloane he was a city worker doing permits, was being thanked for saving his future wife's life. "Dad," he said. I didn't answer him. I was looking at Sloane. She'd taken a step back. Her face had crumpled. Her shoulders were shaking. The mask, the careful, perfect mask she'd worn for 9 weeks of fake apologies and fake groceries and fake interest in my woodworking, had cracked clean through. And what was underneath it was a woman who had just realized that the man she'd been trying to rob was the man who'd given her the life she had to rob with. Her knees gave out. Her mother caught her. "I didn't know," she was saying. "I didn't know. I didn't know." Harriet turned to me. He was still holding my hands. "You have to forgive us. We've never been able to thank you. We tried. We tried for years. The department wouldn't release names. We sent letters. We did everything." "I know," I said. "It's how it was back then." "Sloane has scars," Linnea said. Her voice was very small. "On her back. From the heat. She's been ashamed of them her whole life. She spent her whole life trying to be perfect because she couldn't bear feeling damaged." I looked at Sloane. She was sitting on the floor now against the wall. She was sobbing into her hands. The sounds she was making weren't pretty. They weren't the sounds of someone performing. I walked over. I crouched down in front of her, the way I'd crouched down in front of so many people in the worst days of their lives. "Sloane," I said. She didn't look up. "Sloane," I said. She didn't look up. "Sloane, look at me." She lifted her face. It was wrecked, mascara everywhere, eyes red. "I know what you tried to do," I said. "I know what you tried to do. Market analysis. The senior living brochure. The conversation you tried to have with me 5 minutes ago in the kitchen. I know." She nodded. She couldn't speak. 26 years ago, I carried you out of a building because that was my job. I didn't know your name. I didn't need to. You were a child, and you were going to die. And I wasn't going to let that happen on my watch." She was crying so hard, she was shaking. "What you've done these last few months, that's not my problem to fix. That's yours. The damage you tried to do to me, the way you've manipulated my son, that's not erased by any of this." "I know," she whispered, "but I'm not going to be the one who tells your parents what kind of person you've become. I'm not going to ruin this moment for them. They've waited 26 years to find me. I'm not going to make the night about you." She nodded. "You're going to fix this," I said. "Starting with my son. You're going to tell him the truth. About the realtor. About what you said to me in the kitchen. About all of it. And then he gets to decide what to do with it." "I will," she said. "I will." I stood up. I turned to Henrik and Linnea, who were standing there watching, not understanding what they'd just witnessed. "Your daughter and I have a lot to talk about," I said. "But it's been a long time, and I'm grateful to see your faces. I'm grateful you raised her well enough that she found my son. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that." Henrik hugged me. He held on tight, the way men our age do when there are no more words. We didn't eat dinner that night. We sat in that little apartment and we talked, all 5 of us, until almost midnight. Sloane told Caleb everything. The realtor, the conversations behind his back, the senior living place, the plan. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just listened, and his face got older while she talked. When she was done, He looked at me. Dad, I'm so sorry. I know, son. I should have seen it. You loved her. That's not something to apologize for. He looked at Sloane. I need time, he told her. I need a lot of time. She nodded. She didn't argue. That's how I knew, maybe, that something in her had actually shifted. I drove home that night under a sky full of stars. The road was empty. I had the windows cracked, and the air smelled like cut grass and wood smoke. The wedding got postponed indefinitely. Caleb moved out of the apartment a week later and took a small place across town. He started seeing a therapist. So did seeing a therapist. So did Sloane. They aren't together anymore, last I heard. I don't ask too many questions. He's 34, and he gets to live his own life. He comes by on Sundays now. He sits at my kitchen table and we drink coffee, and he tells me about his week. Sometimes he asks me about my job, real questions. About the calls, about the people, about his mother. He asked me once, a few months ago, why I'd never told him. Your mother and I made a decision, I said. When you were small. We didn't want you to grow up thinking your father was going to die at work. We didn't want that hanging over you. By the time you were old enough to understand, it had been a habit too long. He nodded. Were you scared? At the fires? Every time, I said. If you're not scared, you're not paying attention. I never heard from Sloane again directly. About a year after that night, a letter came in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper written by hand. It said only, I'm sorry. I'm trying to be someone you'd have run into a building for. Thank you for the second chance you didn't owe me. I kept it in my desk drawer. I read it once and put it away. The house is still mine. The trust is still set up the way Patricia and I wrote it. The deed is still on the wall in my office, framed where Barbara hung it the day we paid it off. I'm 67 years old. I retired from the city of Concord, New Hampshire in 2017. I was a captain. I made it home every night for 28 years, which is more than a lot of men I knew can say. I learned a long time ago that the world is full of people who want to take what you have because they think you won't fight for it. They look at gray hair and a quiet voice and a paid-off house, and they see a target. What they don't see is the 30 years you spent walking into rooms everybody else was running out of. What they don't see is what that does to a man. It makes him calm. If you've made it this far, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you've worked the hardest in your life to protect? I read every single one. The next story is in the box on the left. Take care of yourselves out there. I've thought a lot about that night since it happened. Sitting on my porch in Concord with a cup of coffee going cold in my hand, watching the maples turn, I keep coming back to one simple truth. Every choice a person makes leaves a mark, and sooner or later, those marks find their way back to the one who made them. Sloane spent 26 years building a fortress around her shame. The scars on her back from that fire became scars on her character. She decided somewhere along the way that the world owed her something for what it had done to her, and she gave herself permission to take it from anyone she could. When she walked into my house that first night and laughed at my face, she wasn't laughing at me. She was laughing at the small, frightened girl she still saw in the mirror. The cruelty was just armor she'd worn so long she'd forgotten how to take it off. But cause and effect don't care about our excuses. Every cold word she said, every plan she made behind my son's back, every realtor she called without my permission. Those things were seeds, and they were always going to grow into something. She didn't know she was sowing them in the garden of the very man who'd carried her out of the smoke. None of us ever fully know whose lives we've touched, or whose hands we're shaking when we shake a stranger's. What I want to leave you with isn't anger. It's 3 things I'd come to believe matter more than almost anything else, especially as we get older. The first is decency. Not politeness, decency. The willingness to treat people well even when there's nothing in it for you, even when no one is watching, even when you're tired or hurt or convinced the world has already decided who you are. Caleb's mother used to say that character is what you do when the door is closed. Sloane forgot that. I don't ever want to forget it. The second is wisdom, which is just another word for paying attention. I knew something was wrong at that first dinner. I felt it in my chest the same way I used to feel a floor about to give. The older I get, the more I trust that feeling. Listen to your gut. It's been keeping you alive longer than your head has. The third is the quiet kind of strength. Not the kind that shouts. The kind that holds. I didn't beat Sloane by being louder than her or crueler than her. I beat her by being still, by doing the slow, boring, unglamorous work of protecting what I built. Calling a lawyer, signing papers, keeping a notebook, refusing to be hurried into a decision I'd regret. That kind of strength doesn't come naturally. You build it the same way you build anything worth having, one honest day at a time. Take care of yourselves out there, and take care of each other.